I'm making a video game. The goal is to make something small and manageable in scope that I can eventually release on Steam. The reason for this is that I want to. I realise Steam isn't the bastion of curated quality it maybe once was, but there's still something appealing about the idea of having my name up there on a Steam page, and not just down in the reviews giving Skyrim 2 out of 10 because I've modded it so much that it runs like a PowerPoint presentation. So what game am I making? Well, let's talk game design. Specifically, let's talk game mechanics. Even more specifically, let's talk platform game mechanics. It has to be a 2D platformer. They are by far the easiest games to design and develop in terms of scope and feasibility, and it's something I feel pretty comfortable putting together. My aim is to eventually end up at what I call a low-spec platformer, which is to say it looks like it could run on a toaster, but is still fun to play. I'm taking my inspiration from a couple of things. Kuso by Fred Wood, the sequel to the equally simplistic Love, also by Fred Wood. Kuso is a simple, minimalistic game about jumping. You go from here to over there, and you jump to get there. The unique selling point, if it even has one, is that you can place a checkpoint wherever you want, so your progress and frustration is entirely up to you. I'm also inspired by N++, which is a simple, minimalistic game about jumping. You go around a level collecting things and get to the exit without being mangled into pieces. The unique selling point for N++ is that it has unique and clearly defined physics, and the weight of your character is unlike anything you'll find in, say, Super Meat Boy or Hollow Knight. The physics are designed in such a way that what the game is really about is gravity and momentum. You can wall jump, slide and skid, but that's about it, so you need to master these weird little quirks of consistent physics to get through each level. So let's get started. First thing we're going to need is some basic platform movement. There we go, marvellous. This took me 2 days. Not because it's hard, in fact at this point I'm so well versed in my engine that I can get a platformer working in about 30 seconds. No, it took 2 days because I had to tweak variables. Here are my variables. Variable. These control things like movement speed, gravity, jump height, whether you should jump extra high if you're holding the jump button down, things like that. And they have to be right. If they're not right, nothing will ever be good, ever again, ever. So I got them right. A lot of running around an empty room for 2 days. Now we can jump, which is brilliant. It's time to start building up a collection of 2D platformer mechanics. So let's run them down, shall we? For as long as I've been making games, I've been making platformers, and for as long as I've been making platformers, I've wanted to include wall jumping. I've just never known how. This time though, I was determined to make it work. It involves collision sensors and checking the player state and a bunch of other boring nonsense that nobody really cares about, as well as tweaking even more sexy variables. But once you get it right, it's smooth and satisfying and probably my favourite mechanic of the lot. Look at it, it's like butter. Smooth, fat butter smeared all over your face. The way that this is designed, once you make contact with a wall, you'll immediately cling to it and start sliding at a lower rate of gravity than if you were just falling. From this position, if you just press jump, you'll leap off in the opposite direction. One of the things I absolutely didn't want to do was overcomplicate the wall jump. There are certain games, Super Metroid, where the wall jump is a bit too fiddly and not as easy to replicate consistently. I wasn't having that. Now I think most people out of instinct will hold the direction into the wall and then shift their direction as they jump, because that's how most wall jumps work. So I also made sure there's no issues if you do that here. My wall jump is as simple and satisfying as I could possibly make it, and I love it. Honestly, if I could make an entire game out of just wall jumping, I probably would, but unfortunately somebody already made N++. There have been moving platforms since platformers were a thing, so we have to have them. There's not much to tell you about them other than I made them more than 3 times the width of the player character. The reason I did that is, as you might have noticed, you're quite speedy. There's a lot of momentum and not a lot of deceleration, to give the impression of weight to the player. Physics. So if I'm going to do that, I need to give the player room to land. Teachable moment. If you want to give your player a sense of speed and momentum, you also need to make allowances and give them space for them to enjoy it. I realise it seems like a long runway to land a jump, but trust me, the game will be more than challenging enough, even with massively wide platforms to land on. You might also occasionally notice a bug, where being in contact with more than one platform at once makes you fall through them both. Am I going to fix this? No. I'm just going to make sure that when I'm designing the levels, there's no chance at all for 2 platforms to overlap. It can't be a bug if it never comes up. Right, let's get gimmicky. Time to start breaking down the core attributes of a platform. Like for example, what happens if it starts to vanish when you step on it? What this does is give the player a time limit to make their next move. You'll see this a lot in platformer design, limiting the player's planning time and forcing them to be more reactionary. If you couple this with less immediate jumps that they can get used to, what you'll do is teach the player the limits of your physics engine and then test how familiar they are with it, and from this you'll create challenge. Now when they're not standing on these platforms, once you've introduced their behaviour, they have all the time in the world to figure out how they'll approach the challenge in front of them. For this reason, you'll notice the screen is quite zoomed out. This is something else I borrowed from both Kuso and N++, because being able to mentally plan a route through at least a large chunk of a level gives the player all the time and information they need to be good at your game. Contrast this with something like the original Rayman, where your vision is limited and you're often asked to make what we call a leap of faith, jumping towards a platform that you can't see. That's not to throw shade at Rayman, it's just not something I want to use for this game. These ones are timed. A timer in the background will alternate their visibility, and obviously you can only jump on them when they're visible. This is different to the last lot because it happens regardless of if the player is involved or not, which means they don't get as much of a benefit from planning their route. They still have to plan, but they also have to time themselves to the rhythm of the platforms. The previous platforms are slightly more reactionary since you can land on them and make an immediate decision about when to jump. These ones though require the player to match an invisible rhythm, which if they nail it will help them to feel like they're into the flow of the game. If you'd like to learn more about game flow and the flow state, I have another video all about that thing, so go watch it after this one. Another variant on pushing the player to make a reactionary choice, this one involves a different element, in that it physically moves the player while they're thinking about it. So not only are they on a time limit, but they also have to think about how their new position, i.e. plummeting towards what is likely certain death, impacts the physics of their movement. Here you also get to see some spikes and a little death animation that I'm quite proud of. We're combining precision, timing and planning into one devious little mechanic. Press the switch and the platforms will be visible for a while, then they'll vanish and you'll need to press the switch again. This is another subtle variant on the vanishing platform, this time putting the onus on the player to kick off the little gameplay slice they're about to have to do. So if they mess it up, it's all their fault really. I'm definitely not to blame because I'm obviously perfect. Right, that's enough platforms, what else have we got? Yes, we've got wind. Wind is a stage feature that can either be an obstacle or an assistant. There's two types, vertical and horizontal. The vertical one will, at the moment, propel you up into the air, whereas the horizontal one will affect your speed. If you run against it, you slow down, and if you run with it, you speed up. The applications of wind are probably pretty obvious, but I think they're great properties to have in any level, since you're temporarily messing with the player's ability to control their character. And if you use that well, it can be really effective in creating both challenge and momentum. These two both act the same way but in different places and for different reasons. The jelly floor is a coating for the entire floor of a section that basically makes you jump the entire time. The springs are platforms that will give you an automatic jump when you land on them. The jelly floor is something you'll have to constantly deal with while you're on it, whereas the spring is usually used to augment a challenging platform set piece in mid-air, or to take away a degree of player control to make it just a little bit harder. What I don't have yet is a system where bouncing on a spring will actually make you jump higher, because I haven't bothered to figure out how to do that, and I don't know if I really want it in the game. I might, I'm not sure yet. Comment your thoughts below. I know this one's going to be controversial because everybody hates water levels, but I promise I won't make a bad one. Or one that's like the dam level from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. In my game, water effectively means infinite jumps, and a bit of a knock to your horizontal speed. It won't utterly kill the pace by slowing the game down to a crawl. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to implement an oxygen system, so I guess leave a comment if you've got thoughts on that. Please also leave a comment regarding what I thought was a really neat swimming animation, but now that I look at it, looks more like a suggestive thrusting action. Now we're thinking with portals. These work pretty much like the ones in Super Meat Boy, where you keep the exact momentum you had when you entered. They don't increase your momentum like in that game that made portals popular that I've forgotten the name of, because I don't know how to do that, but they do get you from point A to point B, and I think they're pretty cool. As a bonus, this lets me show off my rudimentary lava system, where lava will pool and drip and spill, and you'll die if you touch it or try and eat it, which I definitely don't want to do. Right, that's a lot of mechanics, and it gives me a good starting point for where we're going next. I don't know if I'm done adding mechanics, and if there's something I've left out, please let me know in the comments and I'll see if I can do it. I also don't know yet if there's going to be enemies, pickups, or any of the other usual stuff you find in a platformer, so I guess tune in on the next devlog to see where I ended up. Now as a final treat, obviously I've showcased a lot of mechanics individually here, but a game mechanic isn't much by itself. You want to see them all together. In the real game, you'd never link more than maybe 5 individual mechanics in one level, because you'd risk it getting confusing and overcomplicated. But this is a YouTube video, so let's go nuts. Plus, because it's Halloween, I thought I'd have a little bit of fun with the theming. Oh, and as we all know, people love particle systems. Can't get enough of particle systems, but you have to be subtle. So see if you can spot my very subtle usage of particles in this one giant ridiculous demo level. And like the video if you liked the video, and subscribe if you'd like to see where we're going on this journey together. I'd like to thank you for watching the video this far, and hopefully I'll see you on the next devlog. Now please, enjoy the show.